Before the break, we introduced you to a woman who said she was dragged through the ringer by car insurance giant Allstate. She said that Allstate wanted her to settle for thousands of dollars less than what she was entitled to. She refused the deal they offered her and went to court, and that's where she says the battle got even tougher. Her case is not an isolated one, however. As our reporting reveals, accident victims across the country are fighting back at the insurance companies they thought would protect them. Once again, here's CNN's Drew Griffin.
When Ann Taylor's car was rear-ended,
I woke up the next morning, I couldn't move. I had severe pain in my back. Down both legs were numb and tingly.
the doctor diagnosed herniated disc muscle tears, and the treatment would mean time off work, therapy, and medical bills. The person who hit her was a State Farm employee driving a State Farm car, so Taylor thought at least financially she'd be covered. It added up, said Taylor, to $15,000. But after dragging out her claim, State Farm offered her only $2,000.
I was just very insulted.
Taylor hired attorney Jeff Cook and decided she would fight. It turned into a major legal battle, eventually ending up in this courtroom. Taylor's case is an example of how the two largest auto insurance companies, State Farm and Allstate, have changed the way they handle claims when people are hurt in minor impact crashes. CNN's investigation reveals a strategy to increase profits by limiting payments to accident victims. And former insurance insiders say most of the industry has adopted the strategy. Allstate and State Farm, the industry leaders, would not talk to CNN for this report. But Jim Mathis, a former insurance company insider, who now testifies against the insurance business in court, did. And he says cutting payments to people like Taylor has meant billions for the insurance companies.
It's not based on what should be a settlement value or offer to this claimant. It's not based on ethics. It's not based on profits. It's based on how much profit.
Taylor's case finally got to court 3 years after her accident. Her lawyer brought in medical testimony. To present its case, State Farm just dug deep into Ann Taylor's past.
The lawyer stands up and says to Ann Taylor during her cross-examination, "Tell the jury about your back injury when you were 16 years old."
In fact, the attorney for State Farm raised questions about Ann Taylor falling off a horse when she was in high school. And the lawyer also asked Taylor, a nurse, about throwing out her back when she moved a patient. The attorney even brought up personal things, that Ann Taylor had to sell a horse, that Ann Taylor had to sell her house, that Ann Taylor had even broken up with a longtime boyfriend. And couldn't all these things add to stress, and that could have caused her back pain?
They didn't have any expert testimony. They never had a physician look at me.
They tried to make you out to be a liar.
Exactly.
The attorney for State Farm did produce one piece of evidence, very large photos of two slightly damaged cars.
They expected the jury to see those and to say, yeah, she really wasn't hurt.
Michael Freeman is a crash expert, often called in to testify when insurance companies are trying to use photos to deny a crash victim was injured. How do the insurance companies use photos? Well, take a look at a photo of a car with minimal damage, he says, and convince the jury what they probably were already thinking. That doesn't look like much. How could that person be hurt?
You're eventually being judged by what your car looks like, not by what your doctor says, or by what the impact of a particular crash has had or an injury has had on your life. That's not fair. It's not right. It's fraud.
What stunned Taylor, in the end, is that State Farm's strategy worked. The jury didn't believe she was hurt. They awarded her just $1,500, less than what State Farm originally offered. We contacted 3 of the jurors. They said this photo played a big part in their verdict. And they thought the insurance company had already paid its share, and Taylor was only trying to get more.
Why did they look at her and must have assumed this lady's trying to rip off the insurance companies? She's a fraud.
When she walked in the courtroom and she walked to the jury box and she walked to the testimony box and she walked out of the courtroom at lunch and at the end of the day, they assumed that she was not significantly injured.
It's a case straight out of the McKinsey, the 3 Ds. By denying her claim, State Farm forced Taylor to hire an attorney and sue. After a 3-year delay, Taylor walked into a courtroom with no noticeable pain. And by defending the case for years, State Farm forced her attorney to front expensive litigation costs, which in the end he didn't get back.
They make these cases so expensive to litigate that attorneys won't want to take them.
Indianapolis Superior Court Judge David Dreyer says he hears it from his colleagues across the country. Courts bogged down with minor impact cases. He says the insurance company's own lawyers admit to him they're being forced to drag the cases out.
They've confided to me that they would rather settle a case and that they aren't allowed to settle by the insurance companies that, of course, control the defense.
It's a strategy spelled out in this affidavit from a former Allstate attorney in a lawsuit against Allstate. She explains how 10 years ago the insurance giant was changing the way it did business, driving lawyers out. The former Allstate attorney says Allstate's strategy was to make fighting the company, quote, so expensive and so time-consuming that lawyers would start refusing to help clients. The president of the Insurance Information Institute says the change was needed.
We have a group of attorneys, quite frankly, who are very upset because guess what? The gravy train has ended.
She had like taken off the other way.
Remember Roxanne Martinez from the beginning of our investigation? She was sideswiped, and Allstate offered her $15,000 to cover her medical bills and lost wages. Her case also dragged on for years. But after listening to what her lawyer said was a deliberate attempt to drag Martinez through the ringer, her jury awarded $167,000 plus interest.
I was happy. I thought, well, all my bills are getting paid.
Industry insiders say 80 to 90% of accident victims don't fight. They take what the insurance company offers. Drew Griffin, CNN, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Interesting. You might think all those savings would mean lower premiums for drivers. Well, guess again. The Insurance Information Institute says auto insurance rates have actually gone up 30% over the 10 years since this went into effect. The president of that institute told us rates would actually be much higher if the companies hadn't cracked down on fraud.